When people are asked what they think are the main causes of delinquency, they often say that poor parental child-rearing methods, and especially poor discipline or control of children, are at the root of the problem. The importance of the family in understanding delinquent behavior can be seen in the fact that most theories of delinquency rely heavily on the parent-child relationship and the parenting practices to explain delinquency. Social disorganization theories, subcultural theories, social control theories, and life course theories all have this emphasis. The theoretical emphasis on family processes, in turn, is supported by findings that the family relationship and parenting skills are directly or indirectly related to delinquent behavior. To create a context for this issue, I want to refer to a 2011 study by Abigail Fagan, which found that when they collected data on 18,512 students in grades 6, 8, 10, and 12, that they found that family factors were significantly related to delinquency and drug use for both girls and boys for all grades. And this study also showed that across grades, parents treated girls and boys differently, but neither seemed to receive preferential treatment, and that younger children reported more active and positive parenting than the older students. This study also showed that complex factors were involved in determining the parent-child interactions, and that these factors must be taken into account when examining the causes of adolescent offending and when planning strategies to prevent development of problem behaviors. From a perspective of thinking about the family as a social institution, I want to point out that it's a powerful influence on young children's lives. It's the primary place where socialization occurs, at least up until the time when the child starts school. We learn our identity, our culture, our social roles, our morals and attitudes and values from our family. Now, I did talk earlier about how adolescence was more or less a segue from childhood to adulthood. It's a time when youth start to loosen the family ties and often feel much more connected with their peers. But at the same time, the family has to set those morals, the attitudes, and the values, and with some hope that these internal compasses will guide the youth when they are moving from childhood to adulthood. And of course, adolescence does not mean that there has to be a complete breaking away from the youth and his family. The amount and the quality of the bonds and the ability to communicate and at least maintain some connection may have a strong bearing on the youth's adolescent behavior. And the final point that I want to make about family is that the basis of the child's economic opportunities resides there. Everything from housing to food, health care, to school and enrichment opportunities can be governed by what kind of economic opportunities are presented by the family the child lives in. So, thinking a little deeper about the framework that influences the child's behavior, I mean going a little deeper than the attitudes and values and economic opportunities, you can see from this slide that there are many different dimensions that will influence a child's behavior. In so many ways, the home life of the child becomes a strong influence on how that child will deal with different situations in life. The broken home theory, relating to divorce and single-head of household family structure, was a popular one in the 1990s and even in present research. However, it's just one of many factors. Birth order has some relevance, though it's certainly not a strong predictor. Larger families tend to have more delinquent children, and having delinquent siblings and criminal parents has a strong influence. The quality of the home life and whether the parents have a great deal of marital discord will affect the rate of delinquency. When children are rejected by their parents, there are higher rates of delinquency too. A lack of discipline and supervision also puts the child at higher risk of delinquency, as does being economically disadvantaged. None of these single factors determine all cases of delinquency. Some of them, though, are more predictive than others. For example, family conflict and poor marital adjustment are more likely to lead to delinquency than does just the structural breakup of the family, in other words, divorce. So having divorced parents is not necessarily a risk factor, but having parents who fought a lot and then divorced is. Let's talk briefly about the broken home theory, which refers to parents that are divorced or that are no longer living together. This theory was very popular in the 1990s. The early research found a direct relationship between broken homes and delinquency, but later studies questioned this relationship. What we now know from additional research is that the factor of the broken home seems to affect adolescent females more than it does males. We also know that the broken home has a larger amount of impact on African American families than on other racial groups. What is most important to know is that the research shows that broken homes have a much larger impact on status offenders than it does for more serious offenders. Since we're talking about the structure of the home as a factor in delinquency, I want to point out that the Kodak home, meaning the home where the biological parents live in the same house with all their children, that this home is hardly the only type of family structure in the United States. If you look at the chart that's supplied, you would see that 4% of children live with no parent, that 26% live with one parent, and that 70% live with two parents. Of that 70%, there are still variations that are not biological or adoptive parents. While the Kodak family may be the largest proportion of homes, there are about as many other types of homes represented by the different variations in the illustration given.